Here we go. We should be live on the porch Tuesday morning, sunny, lovely South Carolina. We welcome you all here and being a part.
Yeah, beautiful day outside.
Yeah, gorgeous day.
Yeah, we're
a little cool.
predicting a little bit more rain for the next 2 days, but enjoy the day. And as I see if we can get this going. And so, Roger,
Yes, Rick.
First thing I want to ask you is, last Friday you had the opportunity to be on the local Fox station.
Yes, sir.
And they were talking to you about what?
Well, how parents need to talk to their children about the school shootings. You know, that kids are having different reactions, different issues around the fact of that massive school shooting in Florida. It's all on TV. And so they were trying to help parents in having a conversation with their kids about it.
And how do you talk to a child? And you know, at different ages, I'm sure there's different way you approach it.
Right.
You know, how do you talk to a child about the news that comes across in the last school shooting?
Well, the one of the big pieces that I talked about, Rick, in the piece was around how you talk to your child, not what you actually talk to them about, but the structure of talking to them. And I say a lot of parents see their children having issues with the school shootings and want to instruct them, and the child just tunes them out, you know, and says, my parents don't understand. And so I'm always driven back to that quote, that if you want people to understand you, first make an effort to understand them.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was really much what I was talking about. I was saying, you know, really have a conversation with the child instead of instructing the child. And I use the example, Rick, of two boys talking, and one boy said, yeah, you know, my mother was talking to me about love making and about how a baby comes together and how it grows in the belly, and how you have childbirth at the hospital. And the other kid's just looking at him and says, that's interesting. My mother said I came from Cincinnati.
Yeah.
And there's the big difference there.
Yeah.
Sometimes parents are talking about their fear, their issues, their anxieties, and they don't realize that they're tuning the connection with their child out by doing that, versus saying, wait a minute, I really want to listen to what my children are asking. You know, I need to understand the question. What's the real question here? And that I then want to address that concern, not preach at them. Because again, children do not want to hear information about something they're not concerned about. Yeah. And what they're learning to do across the board is tune people out. And again, another thing that's disturbed me is in society, what we've come to is if you want to be understood, volume is the issue. Mm-hmm. The louder you yell, the more people you get around you, the more you yell down somebody else's opinion, the more your opinion has value. And I absolutely don't agree with that. And I think that we're seeing a lot of energy that could be used for something positive, used to just scream and yell and protest and try to give value to something. And I think when people see that, they tune out. They say, no, I don't feel like we're having a conversation. I feel like you're preaching at me. And that just causes people to tune out. So that was really the dialogue in the Fox show that I was talking about.
That makes a lot of sense. You know, right before we hit live, you know, I made the comment, I really feel for our grandchildren that they're going to grow up and only know schools that are on locked out all the time and almost like a prison. When I say that, not so much the students, but the access in and out. But then again, it hit me. Well, that's going to be their new normal.
They're normal,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
See, that's what we don't get. We remember, 1960s, 1970s, 1980s, and how things were. Yeah, that was the normal then. That's how it operated then. But imagine, Rick, and I can remember my parents talking about, the little one-room school where we all went to school, and first through sixth grade was in one room, and then after sixth grade you went to another room, and like, man, you expected a banjo playing to start, but that was their normal.
Yeah.
And they didn't get. And then I can remember when there was a disturbing issue around changing classes. That school used to be, you went into one class and you stayed in that one class all day long.
Right.
And that was the normal.
Yeah.
But then I can remember I was moving to, you had first period, second period, and you just got up. You didn't think anything about it. You just got up, you walked, the bell went off, you walked to the next class, the bell went on, you started the class again. But our parents were like, oh, I can't. How do you learn in such an environment? Well, you just do the work. And some teachers are better than others, and you like some teachers more than you like others, and that's just life. And I really thought that really got me ready for college, because that's exactly what they did in college.
Right.
And so it just made sense to me.
Yep.
But this lockdown stuff, it's credible, but it's not valid. It will to us seem like lockdown. I think to our grandkids, it's going to seem like normal. That's just what we do. I mean, I can remember when we went to eat with our grandkids, and you had to pass through all these things and get checked for all these things and sign up for all these things and show your ID. I mean, it was a pretty interesting process, but our kids were just, walking along. They're going to the cafeteria. They're eating food, and it didn't faze them one bit. That's, again, under the category of school. That's just school for them. Why is that a problem? It's not a problem to them. Everybody else is doing that. Everybody else is following this set, and so I'm going to follow this set. And if you don't follow, you don't get to come. You get disinvited to be part of that.
Yeah.
And so I just think, at some point, we're trying to control the uncontrollable. And we're not looking at solutions. I think it's on that, Rick. I think it's about focus. I think we are focused on problems. We are problem focused. We're looking at thinking that the one element. I was reading a thing about Christianity. Oh, we need to have Christian politicians, and we need to have Christian this and Christian that, and then Christian that. And they said, people don't look back in history. There was a time that happened when everything was Christian, and it wasn't a pretty time, and people weren't nice. They did some really nasty things, So people are looking at a problem, seeking to solve that problem, rather than I'm going to put my focus in solutions. I'm going to put my focus on what's workable, and then work within that.
Yeah.
And just like the Florida shootings, I think it's very interesting how one group is saying this thing and another person is saying something different about the same situation. It's how they're looking at it.
Well, again, and that's our new normal today. There is no such thing as unbiased reporting. The truth, right.
Man. That's another
But Kim's brought up some good points.
Yeah.
And of course, the one subject that it does bring up all the time is mental health, and more specifically, how do we talk about it, and what is this situation about? Always after the fact, it seems like, there were all these signs that this individual could have done this. Even going back to Columbine, I remember going back to Columbine, one of the parents, when they went in the backyard, they found a satanic basically altar made up, and they said, "Oh, we didn't know, that he was doing this kind of stuff." And
yeah, that's the Florida thing, is incredibly how much they've seen this sign, this sign, this sign, this sign, and that everybody just kind of blew that off. It wasn't their, I love this phrase, wasn't their place.
Mhm.
And how they put that responsibility off on somebody else. It wasn't my responsibility. Wow. And that's a huge change, Rick. I can remember one of the concerns I had when I was in grade school was not that a teacher was upset with me, but that the teacher knew my dad.
Yeah. Right.
So if I messed up in school and the teacher said something to me, there was a piece of me that went, who cares? But man, I knew she knew my dad. Boy, it was gonna matter when I got home. Like, oh Lord, that's not gonna be good. But everybody was interconnected, and that if I messed up in the neighborhood, the neighborhood person would be involved in that.
Right.
But we're back to what we're talking about, Rick. It's not that time anymore. Things have changed. And again, I think we're looking at 1960 or earlier solutions to 2018 problems. No, we got to have 2018 solutions to 2018 problems. And we may come to there is no solution. There is no and everybody wants to point the finger at something.
Yeah.
Gosh, I'm so tired of that. I'm so tired of, oh, this is the problem. Come on. And they just talk out of both sides of their mouth. Because I can remember, I want to say it was the late 70s, where they decided we don't want to finance mental health.
Mm-hmm.
And so they just took literally thousands of people, Rick, and opened the doors.
Yeah.
And let them, and so much of the homeless population, the homeless population just went off the roof, man, because these people were not equipped to handle society. But we weren't going to house them and pay for their upkeep either.
Yeah.
Wow. Come on. There's got to be a balance here somewhere. And and then, oh, this terrible person did here. Well, okay. What's the system? Where's the system going? And again, I do not think when we're in a blaming mentality that there's a solution to be found.
Correct. And again, Ken asked a question similar to that is, what do parents that do not know what to do, either they can see something in their child going on, but once again, the general public doesn't have the idea of what resources are available. And, again, I hear stories that something might be brought to a guidance counselor. And again, I don't want to paint everything this way, but it'll be just explained off. Well, that's just a phase they're going through or something of that nature. And so what should a parent do if they see that something is going on in their child's life, but they don't know what to do and the lines of communication? Because a lot of times these kids will retreat from and not openly communicate with their parents. A lot of times it is because of shame of what's going on in the school or other challenges. And so where do parents go when they think their child might need help?
Ooh. Oh boy, that is a tough question, Rick, because again, we have this mentality of it's somebody else's responsibility. Mm-hmm. And so that we hand it off and we don't follow through. I think it's important to hand off. It's scary to ignore and put it off on somebody else. And that if you see something, you hand it off and you follow through with checking to say, okay, now what did they do with it? Now, because again, the Florida thing was a great example. So many people knew. This kid did not come out of nowhere. He did not do this to the unaware. They were very aware. But the amount of ball dropping in that situation was phenomenal, was literally phenomenal. And that everybody, and then what's great is everybody's pointing the finger at everybody else. It is the greatest finger pointing I've ever seen in this last situation. No this, no this, no this. Wow. It's just some scary stuff. And again, I cannot put any more emphasis on the fact of we've got to quit using yesterday solutions for today's issues. It's got to be something that fits the moment.
One thing I never heard,
a structure that fits the moment.
Did you hear how did he gain access to that school? We just got through talking about here in Greenville County.
It walked in.
So they must not have had this. Because I know they had a resource officer that was discussed.
Right.
Right. So I guess he just walked in, huh? Or...
As far as I know, I mean, I might have missed something, but the fact is that he was a disturbed individual doing red flag stuff that many people said, "Oh, this." I love the phrase that somebody said, "I'm not surprised." That's a scary moment. I wasn't surprised that he came in and did this. Yep. He said he was going to do it. But everybody just kind of, not us, not here, not my responsibility. Again, they handed it off. And then when something bad happens, let me pick a politically correct position, grab a lot of people around me and yell loud and point the finger. Again, the blame factor, which I think is the new style out there that I'm always amazed if anything comes out of that. Yeah. I think it just galvanizes the other side. And they say, we will not be yelled off the stage, so to speak.
And, that's the other challenge we have today is how people come to immediate conclusions without knowing all the facts. And what I mean by that is again, there's that one officer who is now being blamed and called a coward. And
he's coming back. So now we've got a new. First we have let's blame somebody, okay, and the person who blames is supposed to soak up all the blame. Kind of like the scapegoat. Let's put all our sins on this goat and then send them out to the desert to die. That old biblical thing. But that was the style. But what's interesting now is that goat is not running out to the desert. They're coming back and saying, wait a minute. Here's my truth. See, now that's where we're going to have an issue, Rick, is different truths. The truth of the officer, the truth of the agency, the truth of the school, the truth of the kids, and at the end, you got all these people dead.
Yeah.
Whoo-wee, man, that's some rough stuff.
And because, it would be nice to know all the facts behind it before you start pointing fingers or make the scapegoat of somebody.
Wait a minute, Rick. How in the world, with media the way it is, you talk about a slippery slope is the media. I don't know that I was really that aware until lately of how, but I can think, I talked to my sister yesterday, and she asked me a most profound question. And that was there any coverage of Billy Graham dying in South Carolina? And I said, as if Elvis died. That was the level. And she said, in El Paso, Texas, there wasn't anything mentioned. Nobody. I mean, it was just like a one line, Billy Graham died.
Yeah.
That was it. And I'm like, oh my God. And she said, we did see a couple of clips where people were lying on the roads. And I said, you would believe, I mean, every day, over and over, 100 times a day, they're mentioning it. And people are going up there and being part of it. And she said, there's a Billy Graham library. And I said, wow, yeah, it's free and anybody who wants to can go to it. And she said, really? Said, Where we live, no mention. And so there's the difference in even areas of our country. That's why I'm so surprised when I talk to my wife, who grew up in South Carolina, and I grew up in Oklahoma, and we have similar things because we grew up at the same time in different areas. We have similar information. And I'm like, wow, really? You know, and yeah. But there are glitches. I mean, I always love it when she brings up Duke mayonnaise. And I said, Duke's, man, I never even saw a Duke. Never heard of a Duke. You know? And only when I moved to South Carolina, Duke basketball.
Yeah.
You know, I grew up in an area that basketball was next to nothing and football was everything. So what's a Duke? Who's Duke? You know, but I came here, man, I learned very quickly. North Carolina Duke, man, that's a deal. Yep. And Cameron Stadium and how big of a deal that was, and the Duke crazies, all that. Again, I think as time has gone on, we have become more separated in areas of the country and what's covered and how news covers it and the degree. You know, that one of the things you see is the choice being made and the prejudice that is in those choices. You know, this we're willing to do. And Facebook is on some level been an equalizer. And they say, you know, yeah, you've heard about this, but have you heard about this? And you're going, no, I've never heard about this. Well, the reason is that's not politically correct. That's not the political majority. And what they're trying to do is get viewership up because that makes them money.
Right, exactly.
You know, it's the television business.
Revenue
it's the
generated,
entertainment business. We forget that people have a bottom line of that. And we think they ought to be socially conscious. And that the people in California have a grab on the truth that people in the rest of the country don't. That's another one of those, you gotta be kidding me. But that's reality. That really happens. And so that makes it tough. So again, I think people come up to that idea, back to what we were talking about, how to talk to your kids, that there is a generic one way. And what I'm saying in this is there absolutely is not. Nobody should know your kid like you know your kid or your grandkid. And it's that intimate relationship you have with them emotionally that should be the center of the conversation. And that should be in marriage, and that should be in families, you know. And I think we as a population have taken that for granted. We've said, oh yeah, this is it. No. You need to talk. You need to understand. You need to go over. You need to make sure you're heard, and you need to make sure you follow through. You know, quit trying to hand off a problem to somebody else. That dynamics is killing us. It's just killing us. You know, everybody has just gotten great at being snarky and blaming. Those are the two. I mean, it just takes no effort to be a critic. And we are just, I think, because we're working in this dynamics, we're just creating an incredible amount of critics.
And, you know, that's what Kim says. He says, can one person be blamed for a community problem? Of course, no, one person cannot be blamed for a community problem because the word community means more than one.
Well, and the fact is that what I want to say to Kim is, I think you're getting to the core of the issue there, Kim. I love that because, but that's what we want to do. And somehow we're being preached that is possible. And I want you to hear, that's not possible. You know, like Rick's saying, you can't point out one person and have that cover the community or the issue. It's never one problem. It's the connection of people. And the many connections and the many issues, and that we want to be able to listen to a broadcast in New York City tell us the truth in another part of the country is bizarre. It just doesn't work that way. The way you know it, and I love how they're doing it now, is they're sending their anchors to different places. We're not going to report on the flood in Houston. We're going to send our anchors to sit and stand in the mud and talk. Now, and what I say to that is, now you have validity. Now you've walked a mile in my shoes. And so that philosophy is incredibly important.
Yeah, well, that's good advice, and you're right. We do have to live in the 21st century now, and it is the 21st century, and bring the right solutions to the issues that we have now.
But I think one of the things we're doing now, Rick, is romanticizing the past. We're bringing old rock bands back. We're talking about the Beatles. We're talking about way back when, and then airbrushing it and romanticizing it. And we do not see the problem in that. And I think I've mentioned this before. One of the problems is that the youth weren't there, weren't a part of it, doesn't relate to them. And I've got grandkids who love music, but when you bring up the Beatles, they just go to white. Who are the Beatles? Yeah. Who are they? Why does that mean anything? They just go, they tune me out. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's that misconnection, trying to get them to get it rather than hopefully the adults working at getting the kids, not getting the kids to get the adults.
Yeah, I was going to say that's a good point, because I have to admit the same thing with Skylar, who's going to be 12 soon. She'll mention different type of music, and I have no idea who she's talking. Seriously, I have no idea who she's talking about. I'm there. It's like, what's that? Yeah. Never heard that. Who are they? Yeah.
Yeah, who are they? That's the truth. That's the truth. And we want our children and our grandchildren to understand us. And what I'm saying today is that's never going to happen if you don't first look to understand them and say what they're living through has a level of importance. If you do not, I guarantee you're losing the connection. It's like, having a TV station. The connection is lost. And so you may be, showing it out there, but they're not picking it up. I just don't feel kids are being talked with, but being talked to. I think that is a big difference in how things operate.
Yeah. And once we understand that communication is an activity, and you're right, we don't talk to someone, we talk with somebody. Once we get that concept, whether it be your kids, whether it be a coworker, whether it be a friend, the person in the grocery store, I do think that's an art that's lost also, is that we don't understand what it means to talk with somebody, but we talk to them. Once again, that's
no. At them, not to them. I mean, that's what bothers me. Yeah. I get but I'm preaching at them. Yeah. I've got a reality. Here's my reality. Live by my reality. And I think that is a huge, huge disconnect. And then we complain about being disconnected when we've created the disconnect. Mm-hmm. That dynamics is a big deal.
Good point.
And you and I both see that. We both, we're like, oh, wow, and then that is kind of like throwing a rock in the middle of a pond. The waves go all the way out to the shore. And that's the way it is with disconnect. I'm disconnected to other people. And one of lately, the things that have just been hammering me is how in the 70s, there was an idea of, be your own island, do it yourself, take care of yourself, look after yourself, self. Mm-hmm. And we isolated ourselves as quote unquote keeping us safe or keeping us on track or keeping us sane, and that's not worked well.
Yeah.
But they said that was gonna do it, man. Peace, love, and dope. It was all good. Be your own person. No, man. There's an accountability. There's a responsibility to others, and the value of relationships and relating has become at the center of so much of my thought. And that one of the things I love is that I'm hearing more about being aggressively connected, that you can't sit back and just expect people to take the time, money, and energy to explore your life. No, you've got to go out and meet them, and you've got to go out and connect with them, and you've got to take the first step. And here's the hard thing, Rick. You've got to choose to be uncomfortable, because taking that step out and meeting and greeting people is hard. And we got people, and I see this especially with my grandkids. Man, you put an iPhone or an iPad or any other computer-like thing in front of them, and they're like hypnotized.
Mm-hmm.
They just shut everything out. And one of the things that amazes me is how they can sit in front of a computer for hours, not moments, not a minute, not hours. You put that computer in front of them, and you're not going to have a conversation with them for hours. There is a total disconnect. And they then, which is fascinating, if you try to stop them from that, they get angry.
Well, because their brains are addicted to the pleasure they get out of screen time.
Yeah, and we're buying it and feeding it and doing it and then complaining about it.
Mm-hmm.
There's the cycle that disturbs me. Is, again, I like where Dobson went to. Let's all make it a priority to sit down and have an evening meal.
On the flight back from Arizona, there was a...
Wait a minute.
Right.
You went to Arizona? You need to let our audience know, man. Hey, Rick's a world traveler, man.
We'll bring that up a little bit.
No, we need to bring that up now. I love that. People want to know.
But as we go backwards, because this is really relevant, because what I'm saying is there was the father was 2 rows up. It was a mother and her 2 children. I guess the oldest was about 5. The youngest was 3, 2 daughters. And they were sharing with one of the other passengers across the aisle. They're, like I said, they're from California. They do homeschooling. And she was saying that not only do they not allow their kids to have screen time on devices, that they actually have taken the TV out of the house. And the mother says it is so much calmer now in the house. And
you hate to think that, when people work so hard to have a TV, when you remember the first TV I saw was the screen was this big, Rick. That's how big it was. And I remember seeing the Mickey Mouse show. And that was, like in today's economy, getting a car was getting a TV in your house was a big deal. And now when people are saying, we took our TV out, it's like, say what? That seems a little drastic. But I love they've done that, and their life is calmer. And I really want to grab onto that, because there is a real conflict, emotional conflict in a family. The computers, the TVs versus the quiet.
Yeah.
I have seen more and more people, Rick, fearful of quietness. That, if you really want to agitate people, quiet down, calm down. That somehow we have become a nation of emotional junkies, agitation junkies, critic junkies, where we're just to keep it all stirred up, and that's people's normal now, and that is disturbing. That we fear calmness. And that is a, ooh, wee.
Well, and again, how did we become the Prozac Nation? Is yeah. So yeah, Cheryl and I were very fortunate. We were invited out to a place called Rosewood, which is a treatment center for eating disorders, and we had a great time out there.
It was in Arizona, right?
Arizona, yeah.
Where a particular
Wickenburg.
town? What?
Wickenburg,
Okay.
which is right northwest of Phoenix. So we flew into Phoenix,
Ooh.
then went up to Wickenburg.
Yeah, I saw some stuff on Facebook.
Yeah.
It looked gorgeous.
It was
Ooh.
very, very nice, and we were treated like royalty. And the sad thing is, of course, when I say sad thing, the great thing is there's not even recognition that there is such things as eating disorders, and they have a much better grasp on how to treat eating disorders so they can come out. But basically, you have to break the person down. It's almost like the military, I guess, or a prison where everything's taken away from you, and then you rebuild it. But talking about what's going on, we didn't have access to news or TV for a couple of days. And it really is amazing how life still goes on without being told we're about ready to be nuked or
Oh, man, right.
Or
And
that the
how-
world's falling apart.
Another thing I'm thinking about, Rick, is the series television out now. Amazon, Netflix, where you can sit and watch, if you've got the time, no commercials, just an ongoing series after, there may be a program that's got 10 hours of programming.
Mhm.
And before you know it, there's your life.
Yeah.
You start program one and you're just following it.
Yeah.
Like it's a 30-minute show and it's a 10-hour show.
Yeah. And Kim's asking a good question, and I've never done this before, but I'm going to excuse myself a minute to find a book that will have the answers if it's here in the office. It may not be in the office.
That's the old style. Let's use the book. Not the book. Not opening the book. Oh, that's terrible. Yeah.
He asked, is it the TV or is it not teach your kids how to cope? And there's a book out there called The God-Shaped Brain by Dr. Tim Jennings, who's done research exactly on that. And unfortunately, I must have it at the house. But he has some very interesting research as to how the world changed in 1947 when TV was first introduced. And it's not good. Like I said, I wish I could quote exactly what his research has shown, but how violence increased and there was a lot of negativity that came with the introduction of TV in 1947. And then in South Africa, that was in the United States. Of course, in South Africa, TV wasn't introduced till much later, and they saw the same
Results come out of it.
statistics coming up. So it wasn't an issue.
But I think a piece of all this, Rick, is the fear. What we've come to is the price we're paying. We've become addicted to noise.
We have.
And that is like, and I love that kind of drug analogy. It's the new drug, keeping things. Here's one of the differences that's amazed me is that in our household, Suzanne was brought up with the TV always on, and so late at night, the TV can be on. She can go to sleep in the middle of a program, just knock out. And I'm like, I'll if the TV's on, if it's 5 a.m. and I'm about to fall out, I'm not. It's an odd time that as long as the TV's on, that I can go to sleep. I can't go to sleep. I'm just enthralled by it. It's just magnetic. And the one thing I have to really watch myself on is the culture of noise. The culture of noise. It's just scary how people have got to have noise. And I think a subtle change of that, it reminds me of reading something at the library. When you say library and reading, what do you think?
Well, again, our generation would think quiet.
Quiet,
Yeah.
right. Shh, it's a library, be quiet. But then go into Barnes & Noble, okay, and where they allow coffee and Coke and sandwiches and pizza, and people are talking all around it. There's music being played over the speaker, and people are reading along, and it's incredibly noisy. But people are just going all around and reading, and I'm thinking, wow, what an amazing change in our lifetime in just that one element of culture of how to read a book.
Yeah.
Used to be you can't read a book if you don't have total quiet, and now read a book and you can have a freight train going by, but it's still reading the book.
Yeah, and you see this a lot also in the library where people have their headphones on listening to, I guess, music while they're reading or working on the computer. But yeah, so that's a great question, Kim. And like I said, and I think you met Dr. Jennings, or at least went by his booth when in Nashville at ACC, but he has written that God-Shaped Brain. He has some very interesting statistics, again, that were not positive regarding what happened to society once TV was introduced and how violence increased and some other things. And like I said, unfortunately, I don't have the book here, so I don't want to say too much about it and quote them wrong, but maybe next Tuesday we can start off there.
Well, you might not want to say what the book says, but you could say what your understanding of the material you read. This is what you understood it to be.
Which is it didn't bring along. Even thinking again, we've talked about Andy Griffith and Leave It to Beaver stuff.
Hey, buddy, Andy,
yeah,
Mayberry.
And yeah, so they
I watched that the other day. I loved it, man. I'm like, man, that's some crazy stuff.
They do have some morals, but again, in the 40s and 50s, that was the Milton Berle, that was the Jack Benny, and you would say, well, what could go wrong with that? So obviously, it's not. Well, programming is part of it. It has something to do with the technology itself. And are we going to take the technology? No, we're not going to get rid of devices and screens. And it again, it's just like Roger said, it's our new normal today. So how do we, prepare our kids? And of course, we don't have control over the grandkids. And what I mean by that is the parents are going to do what the parents are going to do. But again, that's their normal. Is let your kids play with the iPads and screen time, and our normal was, our parents were criticized because when TV was introduced, they said that became our babysitters. They put us in front of Howdy Doody or Roy Rogers or something, and so it's the same.
Well, one of the things I think is at the core of what you're talking about, Rick, is the word discipline and structure. I think when
I'm still sitting there.
He's still in with that book, man. He's on the hunt for the book.
Kim says he has it, but I don't know if you mean you have it at the office or you have it. But yeah, it is. Go ahead.
No, that broke my train of thought.
Discipline and structure.
Yeah, I think there's where we're struggling.
Mm-hmm.
Is that it's just like food. We are a plentiful nation. Our normal is you get in a car or you walk, you go to the grocery stores, the aisles are full, and if you've got the money, you can buy anything you want. But everything's not healthy for you. And then I see a move or swing away from that into discipline.
Mm-hmm.
Watch what you put in your mouth. What you put in your mouth has an effect on your mood and how your body operates.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you want it to operate at its optimum level, even though you have the money, even though you have the grocery store, you have to choose to be picky and to supply your body with what it needs. And so it puts a responsibility on the person, that your car isn't going to automatically drive to a fast food restaurant and eat cruddy food.
Which, again, I've not done the research, but you also hear that they spent, their research has shown that they've actually made this food addictive.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. If we knew all the research fast foods have had, I think we'd be scared. And if we knew actually what was in all the fast food, again, we'd be scared. And if we knew all the processing that went into food, we'd be scared. Mm-hmm. But again, I see a swing here where people are saying, watch everything that's going in your mouth.
Yeah.
watch what effect that has. Watch what you do with that. That a lot of the physical problems we're having is because we've been undisciplined. And I think that's the same way with electronics. I think we got it. If we can get it, we need to get it. Get the latest iPhone, get the latest screen, get the latest picture, get the latest, and we've just been eating everything in sight for electronics rather than to say, wait a minute, do I really need that? Is that really what's going to benefit us? And again, also, it's not doing away with electronics, it's structuring electronics. Okay, we're going to do electronics from this time to this time. And then we're going to put it up. And one of the great examples of that, and I love, is cell phones, where a teacher has built a holder in the front of their yard, in front of their class. And for the children to check in, they have to take their phone and put it in the slot. And then when the class is over, they can pick it back up again. And that keeps the usage down.
Yeah.
Well, see, that took brains, that took structure, that took discipline. And I'm sure lots, not just a couple, I bet a lot of people were not happy with that.
Oh, they weren't happy. In fact, I think I shared on this show before that that's one of the challenges I have in my classroom is I don't do that, but I do ask them to put their cell phones up. Our classes are 1 hour and 20 minutes. And it's interesting as to how many students cannot even sit 1 hour and 20 minutes without pulling out the cell phone. And again, even though they know the rule is no cell phones, even though they I guess they know it's rude. I've had to remind them a few times how rude it is to be on the cell phone when I'm up there in front talking to them. But they're so addicted to it that they cannot sit 1 hour and 20 minutes without taking a sneak look at it or even being overt about it and just bring it straight out.
One of the things, Rick, and you and I have talked about too, is public speaking. When you and I first started public speaking, there weren't any cell phones. And being interrupted was a major issue. I mean, you pretty much had to stop everything, address whatever was going on and coming back. If you do that now, you can't publicly speak. I'm always saying now, if a phone doesn't go off, I'm thinking something's wrong here.
You're not talking to anybody.
Right. So I where years ago, if when the phones came in, that it would stop a presentation. Now it's not even a speed bump to me. Yeah. If it goes off, it's like I'm just going on. I've learned to put that by the side and keep focused on whatever I'm saying and doing. And that people getting up, I got to go to the bathroom. That is the new normal. That is how people are operating. And either you adjust to that or, then you can't properly convey an idea. Yeah. It's a change in how things are operated.
And, I do understand, again, what you said about sometimes we do romanticize the good old days. and there's a lot of truth in that.
Yes, amen, man. That's the gospel truth there, Rick.
But again, you look at also how, and I don't know how it was in your house, but, just how the idea changes somewhat, because I know in our house, we at one time we had one, and for those that don't understand, a landline phone means it's actually hooked into the wall. And
you had one. That's a good one.
And you had to pay a lot of money a month for that. And if you called anywhere outside your local prefix, it cost you a ton of money to call.
Yes. Hey, Rick, I'll tell you another. I just have to jump in here and tell you, for people to understand landlines. I can remember a person telling me that they were on the phone and their sibling was wanting to use the phone, and they used the phone to knock out the other sibling. They hit them with the phone. That was the heaviness and the structure of the phone. They weren't these lightweight. They were these huge, heavyweight, black bam! It was a weapon, and it was hard enough that swinging it could knock another human being.
Oh yeah, that's true. And
sorry, I just had I'll never forget what they said.
But the other part of that
knocked them out with it.
was before there was even such the concept of a answering machine or voicemail. But the rule was when the phone rang at dinner time, you just let it ring, and no one I don't remember my parents ever being concerned about, ooh, are we missing something important? Guess what? It rang and it rang and it rang, and then it stopped. And life, again, still went on.
You know what my parents did? They took the phone off the hook.
Yeah.
You know, we don't worry about the phone ringing because it can't ring.
Yeah.
You know, it's not going to ring because we know how to make it not ring.
But that's going back to your idea of addiction. Yeah, trying to tell a family today, guess what? You know, why don't you, when you all come home at night, put all your phones in a basket in the house.
Turn them off.
And not worry about it till the next day.
It'll keep the messages will be there. Oh, man. You know, and again, I've mentioned this on the show before. Joyce Meyer saying, put away your phones. You're not that important.
Mm-hmm.
And there is that. I've got a phone. I'm somebody. You know, that kind of mentality out there. And it's hard to remove yourself from that. But again, having a structure, having a discipline, you know, again, is about if you do not structure yourself, then you're easily going to be 300-400 pounds.
Yeah.
You know, the reason people are thin is because they've made a structure where they don't eat that much.
Yep.
And they exercise.
Yep.
And, you know, it's no mystery. It's no surprise there. You know, it's that I've made a choice to make this a priority. And when things are made a priority, things change.
Mm-hmm.
In a personal life, in school life, in corporate life, it changes because of a shift of structure.
Kevin, says, which do you believe create greater influence over a child? TV, video games, music, parental influence, peer influence, sibling influence that has changed through the generation? My response would be yes.
Well, I guess my answer to Kim would be music. And the reason I would say music is it's subtle. It's not as direct as electronics. So I could be sitting in the car, I could be driving the car, and indirectly being influenced by music. And what brings me to that is nothing is more interesting than these programs out there that pitch the music of yesteryear, the 60s or the 70s. And it is fascinating how you can turn that music on and, Bo, you're back there. You're back there in a microsecond. You know, you're back there at the burger joint. You're back there, you know, with your friends. You're back there and you're 10 years old. And it just happens in a microsecond. And it wasn't like you disciplined yourself and said, I'm going to remember this. It just locked in there. And people seem to remember old tunes better than they remember old family issues or old family structures or whatever. It's that influential.
And the words come right back to you. Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah. And I mean, I have trouble remembering people's names, but I can remember, you know, it was funny. Suzanne and I were watching a thing on 60s music, and we were watching it, and we could both just chime, oh, this is what this is. I remember this. And it's because it played over and over and over again. I mean, incessantly. And it was that background indirect influence that subtly superseded everything else that I think is the scariest element out there of influence.
And for those that are born after the 80s, how we used to get our music recorded to play in the car on our cassette deck was you had a
8-track tape.
Yeah, well, but you could buy an 8-track.
Man,
if you wanted,
an 8-track tape.
If you didn't want to put the money into it, you had to sit there with the radio on and your cassette recorder right next to it. And every time the music starts, record it, then stop. Every once in a while, you got the end of start of a commercial, and
high tech here. We're high tech.
And that's how you created your playlist back in the 60s and 70s. You didn't create it on Napster. You didn't create it on Amazon Music. You created your playlist, sitting hours and hours at the radio, trying to catch these songs as they were coming on. And,
you know, another piece of that I'm thinking, Rick, is buying albums. You know, you would buy an album for one song.
Mm-hmm.
One song would be great. The rest of the album, you pretty much throw away. But boy, when all the change in music happened, boy, if the entire album wasn't good, then you weren't buying it. And then when you had the ability to record and download and have a playlist. You only picked the best, and you didn't buy any of that stuff.
And
it was just wasted.
Again, people our age, noise. I bet you could ask many of them, and they can remember the first album they bought.
I can today remember that.
Can you remember your first album? Because that's how important music was. And when you had that ability to have that money in your hand and go out and buy your first album, that was a life.
Yes, it's a big thing in our family.
And
my sister bought the Beatles, and I bought the Beach Boys.
And I got
that was it, man. That was oh boy, and we played till the needle was dull. That was how it worked. Yeah, that was a wild time.
And you got to try to explain what a needle is, that you actually have to replace needles. And there was something to be said about knowing exactly where that scratch in the album would happen every time.
Gosh. Yeah, if you scratched an album, that was it.
But you still played it, and you knew where the scratch was coming up, or
there's some recognize. We got a scratch, you throw the album away. I didn't play through the scratch. It wasn't worth listening to anymore. That was the difference. But it had an effect, and it had an indirect effect, and it wasn't like it really was. And it's funny, it was background music to our lives, but down the years it's become easier for us to remember than real life was.
Well, and again, Roger and I are reminiscing, but sometimes that's what's fun about life is it was background music, but it was also foreground music. And what I mean by that too, like you said, a lot of life was penetrated by the music that was played.
That's a good
the Beatles. The Beatles
penetrated by the music. Yeah. Ooh, I love that. Penetrated by the music. That is powerful. That's scary.
You play the White Album for somebody today, and I'm sure they would think. And when I say somebody today, I'm sure somebody, what we would call a millennial or something.
Yeah.
I'm sure they would cock their head like a dog. Say, "What? You listen to this? Well, it makes no sense to me." But
yeah.
But the Beatles and the Stones and Cocker and even Leon Russell and so forth. Just that was like I do know there's research out there, and what does it say that the music that you are familiar with by the age of 14 or something, that's kind of what influences you the rest of your life and something about the age of 14 and the music that was playing at that time is and it is true. That would have been 68 for me, and I can still remember a lot of the songs that were played in 68, and Build Me Up Buttercup is a stupid song, but
Build Me Up Buttercup. I don't know that one.
But every time that comes on the radio, you're right. I go right back to 68.
Without that, junior high, the junior high relationships, Midnight Confession. That's another one of those. It's just amazing how that draws you there. And again, you romanticize. And what we've got to do is, with that having such incredible power, we've got to discipline ourselves to level out that power. And we've got to be purposeful in making connections. And we will never make connections if we're looking for people to understand us. We must start with understanding them and creating an emotional dialogue with people that matter to us.
And junior high, and I got a friend, he is a friend on Facebook. I don't know, Craig, if you ever watch this or not, but in junior high, I guess it was 9th grade, they were offering dance classes, and Craig's a genius. Craig and all the other boys would have nothing to do with dance or going to a dance class or whatever. And Craig said, maybe this is a place where we can meet some girls,
Hey, buddy.
And so I think girls. I think he and I were the only two boys in that whole dance class, of maybe 30 people, and it worked. We got our girlfriends.
Met a girl. Hey, that's how it worked out. Yeah. And I love that. That's genius.
Yeah.
That's genius. That's exactly how it is.
He always was a good thinker and always a smart guy. Good for that. But you're right. So, sometimes it's fun to reminisce on those who don't relate to it. We're sorry, but guess what? That's life sometimes. So
That's life on the porch, you know.
Yeah, join
You're
us.
not trying to
Yeah,
relate to anybody but who's sitting down with you.
Yeah, we'd love to hear some of your
Yeah.
stories of what it was
Yeah.
like growing up.
We appreciate
other-
Kim,
yeah.
you know, jumping in here and getting a piece of what's happening. And that's available to everybody.
So good discussion, and I do just defend like the idea that, you know, we do have to address today's issues with today's solutions and not always depend on the solutions of 40 years ago to try to address it. And I think that's part of the challenge we do have, especially again as you start getting our age, is there is something to be said about, you know, it's hard to pull us into the present sometimes because we do feel comfortable of the good old days. And the only reason it's the good old days is because our brains are designed to kind of forget the traumas we had in life.
Whoa.
and
The struggles.
yeah, and that, but we do remember the good times we had, and we forget what it was like to be an adolescent trying to
That's so
date
true.
and date
That'll preach.
and to you know, be defiant to parents and so forth. But guess what? There were those times too. But so anyway, I think a great discussion today, Roger, and we could pick it up next week somewhat. Love to, like I said, if anybody sees this afterwards and wants to just drop some,
Throw us a line. We love it.
Yeah,
that helps us.
what it was to you know, some of the remnants, how it was to reminisce on your past, and you know what the good old days were like for you in the 60s, 70s, even 50s, 40s. We love to hear about that too. But other than that, then we will just plan on seeing everybody on the porch.
Back on the porch next
Tuesday
week.
at 10 o'clock.
Thank you for being a part.
Everyone have a good one. And now the train to stop this, guys.